The Cambodian Civil War, fought between 1967 and 1975, was a devastating conflict rooted in colonial legacy, domestic unrest, and Cold War geopolitics. Though less globally recognized than the Vietnam War, it led to one of the most horrific genocides of the 20th century. Background and early tensions. After gaining independence from France in 1953, Cambodia came under the rule of Prince Norodom Sihanouk. Attempting to keep Cambodia neutral during the Cold War, Sihanouk balanced relations with both the United States and communist nations. But beneath this neutrality, discontent grew. Political opposition was suppressed, rural poverty deepened, and communist ideology quietly spread among the peasantry. By the late 1960s, the seeds of civil war were sown. In 1967, rural uprisings began in Battambang province, and by 1968, the Khmer Rouge, a Maoist guerrilla group, had officially launched an insurgency against the state. They remained small at first, but the tide would soon turn. The Vietnam War and U.S. bombing. Meanwhile, the Vietnam War was escalating next door. North Vietnamese forces began using Cambodia's eastern territory to move troops and supplies. In response, the United States launched a secret bombing campaign inside Cambodia in 1969, hoping to destroy communist sanctuaries. But these bombings had unintended consequences. Thousands of civilians were killed or displaced, and rural anger against the government grew. The Khmer Rouge capitalized on this chaos, recruiting peasants who had lost homes, families, and faith in the state. 1970 coup and widening war. 1970, while Sihanouk was traveling abroad, General Lon Nol staged a US-backed coup and abolished the monarchy. Sihanouk, from exile, formed an alliance with his former enemies, the Khmer Rouge. His popularity drew mass support for the insurgents, even among those who did not fully support communism. The war became a showdown between Lon Nol's Khmer Republic, supported by the US, and the Khmer Rouge, now seen as both nationalist rebels and communist revolutionaries. However, Lon Nol's government was weak, corrupt, and poorly organized, relying heavily on American aid and air power. Over time, the Khmer Rouge, backed by China and supported logistically by North Vietnam, expanded their control over Cambodia's countryside. Collapse and Khmer Rouge victory. By 1975, the Khmer Rouge had nearly encircled Phnom Penh. The US, following its withdrawal from Vietnam, stopped its support for Lon Nol. On April 17, 1975, Khmer Rouge forces entered Phnom Penh unopposed. The civil war had ended, but Cambodia's nightmare was only beginning. Aftermath. The Cambodian genocide. Immediately after taking power, the Khmer Rouge began implementing their radical vision of a classless, agrarian society. Cities were evacuated at gunpoint. Money, religion, and private property were abolished. Intellectuals, teachers, monks, and even people who wore glasses were targeted as enemies of the revolution. Over the next 4 years, an estimated 1.7 to 2 million Cambodians, roughly a quarter of the population, died due to starvation, forced labor, disease, and mass executions. This genocide transformed Cambodia from a war-torn nation into a land of death and silence. To conclude, the Cambodian Civil War was not just a local conflict, it was the result of international interference, domestic repression, and ideological extremism. The US bombing campaigns, the 1970 coup, and Cold War dynamics all contributed to the rise of the Khmer Rouge and the eventual genocide. It stands today as a tragic warning that when foreign interests collide with local instability, the cost is often paid by innocent civilians. The legacy of the war is a scar Cambodia still bears, and a lesson the world must never forget. Thanks for watching. Join us for more gripping stories of Southeast Asian conflicts.